My son abandoned me after I lost my job, but he didn't know I was a millionaire. The taxi's engine hummed softly as it rolled to a stop outside Ethan's house, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. I stepped out, my worn leather satchel slung over one shoulder, the weight of it familiar yet heavier today. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and blooming jasmine, a scent that should have soothed me after weeks away. Instead, my pulse quickened, a nervous flutter in my chest. I'd come home to share news that could change everything, but the front door loomed like a judge awaiting my plea. Inside were Ethan, my son, and his wife, Nicole, people I'd poured my life into. I smoothed my faded blouse, tucked a stray gray hair behind my ear, and knocked, hoping they'd see the woman who'd given them everything, not the tired housekeeper I'd been for decades. The door swung open, and Ethan's silhouette filled the frame, his broad shoulders tense under a crisp white shirt. His hazel eyes, once so warm when he was a boy, flickered with impatience. "Mom, you're early," he said, his voice clipped, as if my arrival disrupted some unspoken plan. I forced a smile, stepping into the foyer where polished hardwood gleamed under a crystal chandelier, a chandelier I'd paid for, though my name wasn't on the deed. The house smelled of lavender air freshener and something sharper, like tension simmering beneath the surface. "I wanted to talk to you both," I began, my words careful, rehearsed. "It's about my job with Catherine." Ethan's jaw tightened, and before I could continue, he turned toward the living room, expecting me to follow like a guest in my own sacrifice. Nicole lounged on a velvet sofa, her auburn hair cascading over one shoulder, a fashion magazine splayed across her lap. She glanced up, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes, green, sharp, like jade under moonlight. "Aurora, you look exhausted," she said, her tone syrupy with false concern. "Long trip?" I nodded, setting my satchel by the coffee table, its glass surface reflecting the soft glow of a Tiffany lamp. The room felt staged, every cushion and trinket perfectly placed, yet it lacked warmth, as if love had been traded for appearances. I took a breath, steadying myself. "I'm not working for Catherine anymore," I said, the words tumbling out faster than I'd planned. "I came back to be here, to help you both." The air shifted, heavy with unspoken judgments, and I braced for their response. Ethan's face darkened, his brows knitting together like storm clouds gathering. He crossed his arms, leaning against the fireplace mantel where a framed photo of him and Nicole grinned falsely. "You quit?" His voice sliced through the room, sharp and accusing. "That was $8,000 a month, Mom. What, you think you can just sit around now, doing nothing?" The words stung, each one a barb sinking into my heart. I'd expected surprise, maybe worry, but not this raw contempt. My fingers tightened around the strap of my satchel, the leather creaking under my grip. "I didn't quit to take it easy," I said, my voice quieter than I meant, trembling at the edges. "I thought I could make things easier for you." But Ethan's eyes narrowed, and I saw it then. He didn't see a mother, only a ledger that had stopped balancing. Nicole set her magazine down with deliberate slowness, her manicured nails tapping the glass table, a rhythm that grated against my nerves. She tilted her head, studying me like a specimen under glass. "Help us how, exactly?" she asked, her voice laced with mockery. "You're not exactly qualified for much, Aurora." The room seemed to shrink, the walls pressing in as her words echoed Ethan's disdain. I glanced at the window, where sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains, catching dust motes in a lazy dance. I wanted to tell them about Catherine's gift, the fortune she'd left me, but something held me back, a flicker of doubt. Instead, I pivoted, grasping for connection. "Ethan mentioned you're planning to get pregnant soon," I said, looking at Nicole. "I thought I could be here, support you through it, maybe help with the baby." Nicole's expression froze, her lips parting in a soundless scoff. She exchanged a glance with her mother, Susan, who just entered from the kitchen, a glass of white wine in her hand. Susan's silver bob gleamed under the chandelier, her posture rigid with academic arrogance. She was a university professor, after all, and never let anyone forget it. "Postpartum recovery isn't something you'd understand," Nicole said flatly, her gaze cutting through me. "It requires professional care. You cleaned houses, Aurora. What would you know? Susan nodded, swirling her wine with a practiced flick of her wrist. Raising a child is a science, she added, her tone dripping with condescension. It's not just diapers and bottles, it takes training. Amateurs don't cut it. Their words landed like blows, precise and practiced, as if they'd rehearsed this dismissal long before I walked through the door. I swallowed a bitter laugh, my throat tight with the urge to scream. The living room, with its plush rugs and curated art, felt like a stage where I'd been cast as the fool. I'd spent 30 years nursing Ethan through illness, working double shifts to fund his education, even sacrificing my marriage to give him a future. Yet here they stood, reducing me to a caricature, a bumbling maid unfit to touch their lives. I see, I said, forcing a smile that felt like a mask. If you've got it all planned, I won't interfere. My voice was steady, but inside, anger simmered, a slow burn igniting years of swallowed pride. Susan rolled her eyes, setting her glass on a coaster with a faint clink. Good, she said. But you'll cover the nanny and baby nurse costs. I'll handle hiring. The audacity of it, expecting my money while shoving me aside, left me breathless, a knot twisting in my chest. Ethan, silent until now, stepped forward, his sneakers scuffing the hardwood. Exactly, he said, his voice rising to match Susan's command. You shouldn't have quit, Mom. Our expenses are about to double. You need to keep working. His words were a slap, raw and unyielding, stripping away any illusion of gratitude. I stared at him, my son, the boy I'd carried through fevers, whose dreams I'd funded with my sweat, and saw a stranger. The chandelier's light cast jagged shadows across his face, mirroring the fracture in my heart. I'm 58, Ethan, I said, my tone hardening. I've earned some rest. But Nicole laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that echoed off the walls. Rest? You don't have a pension, Aurora. What retirement are you talking about? Her cruelty was a blade, slicing through decades of devotion, and I felt the room tilt beneath me. The memory of their past demands flooded back, unbidden. Years ago, when I'd wanted to save for a retirement plan, they'd convinced me to funnel every cent into paying off their mortgage early. It's an investment in our future, Ethan had said then, his voice soft, pleading. I'd believed him, pouring my savings into this house, a house they now claimed as theirs alone. You told me to skip the pension, I said, my voice low, trembling with suppressed rage. You said it'd help us all. Nicole tossed her hair, her jade eyes flashing. That's because your income was pathetic, she snapped. Who told you to buy a house you couldn't afford without a loan? You should have planned better. The accusation burned, rewriting my sacrifices as failures, and I felt the air grow thick, suffocating. Ethan raised a hand, as if to calm Nicole, but his gaze turned on me, hard and unyielding. Enough, Mom, he barked. Nicole's trying to get pregnant. You're stressing her out when we need money most. You're in great shape, there's no reason you can't work another 20 years. Save the retirement talk for when you're 80. His words hollowed me out, a cold wave washing away the last threads of hope. 20 years. 80. The numbers echoed in my mind, a sentence of endless labor for a son who saw me as nothing more than a tool. I stood frozen, my hands clenched at my sides, nails digging into my palms. The room's elegance, the silk drapes, the marble fireplace, felt like a mockery of my life's work, a monument to their greed built on my back. Susan, sensing my resolve waver, softened her tone, a snake shedding one skin for another. She stepped closer, her perfume sharp and floral, overwhelming. Look, Aurora, we get it, she said, her smile thin as a blade. But be realistic. There's no spare room here, you can't stay forever. I have a compromise, though. Her eyes gleamed with calculation, and my stomach twisted, sensing a trap. I know a wealthy family needing a live-in assistant, she continued. Good pay, room and board. You've done that work before, it'd be perfect. Nicole chimed in, her smirk venomous. Win-win, right? You ease our financial load, and you're not idle. The word hung in the air, a polite insult, and I felt my face grow cold, my jaw tightening as their plan unfolded. I shook my head, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I'm done working in anyone's house, I said. I've quit for good. Susan's smile vanished, her gaze sharpening like a hawk spotting prey. She paused, then spoke again, her tone airy but laced with pressure. Well, if you're set on that, there's a senior residence nearby. Decent meals, lodging. You could work there, kitchen help, maybe janitorial. Earn your keep. Nicole rolled her eyes, scoffing. At least in assisted living, you'd pull your own weight. Stop expecting us to carry you. The room spun, their words a chorus of dismissal, and I felt rage ignite in my chest, hot and unyielding, burning away years of silence. I turned to Ethan, my voice trembling but firm. Is this what you think of me? That I should scrub floors in a retirement home just to eat? He looked away, his jaw twitching, but then met my gaze with a practiced rationality. Mom, you've always said you wanted to be independent, he said, pulling out his phone. This is dignified. You support yourself, and we don't owe each other anything. There's an open spot, I checked earlier. You could move in today. His fingers hovered over the screen, ready to dial, and I watched in disbelief as the boy I'd raised prepared to cast me out like refuse. The chandelier's crystals tinkled faintly, stirred by a draft, a fragile sound against the weight of his betrayal. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. My hands shook as I gripped my satchel, the leather warm under my fingers, grounding me. Ethan, I said, my voice breaking, I gave everything to raise you. Drained my savings for this house. And now you see me as a burden you can't wait to dump? For a fleeting moment, guilt flickered in his eyes, but it drowned in a surge of fury. He kicked my suitcase across the floor, the thud echoing like a gunshot. You think you suffered, he shouted, his face flushed, veins bulging. That was your choice. If you hadn't divorced Dad, we wouldn't be broke. I could have grown up rich. You owe me, Aurora, for life. His words tore through me, a dull blade twisting in my chest, and I pressed a hand to my heart, steadying the ache. He didn't know the truth, couldn't know. I'd left his father to protect him, to keep him from a man who'd have tossed him into foster care without a second thought. Every choice, every tear, had been for Ethan's chance at a whole life. But now, standing in this pristine living room, surrounded by the trappings of my sacrifices, I saw the cruelest irony. The boy I'd saved was destroying me. I straightened, my voice cold and final. If this is how you repay me, we're done, I said. You and I have nothing left. I lifted my suitcase, its weight lighter now, and walked toward the door. Susan grabbed my arm, her nails sharp. You can't just abandon your son, she hissed. I shook her off, my gaze icy. Legally, I owed him until he was 18. I've given 30 years. What more does he want? Nicole stepped forward, her voice shrill with outrage. What kind of mother walks away? You raised him, now you wash your hands of it? That's irresponsible. I let out a cold laugh, the sound foreign to my own ears. Irresponsible? I said, turning to face her. You're a professor's daughter, Nicole, and that's your argument? I've supported him into his 30s. What's your excuse for treating me like garbage? Ethan's face twisted, his voice venomous. You made bad choices, Mom, and now you're guilty. Every miserable thing in my life is because of you. Did you ask my permission to bring me into this world? His words were madness, unhinged, and I stared at him, a stranger in my son's skin. The room's elegance, the velvet sofa, the marble mantel, felt like a tomb, sealing away the love I'd once known. I paused at the threshold, the door half open, cool evening air brushing my face. If you've got such twisted questions, I said, my voice low, ask the mother who left you in a dumpster. The words slipped out, sharp and final, a truth I'd never meant to voice. Ethan froze, confusion flickering across his face, but I didn't wait for him to process it. I stepped outside, the door clicking shut behind me. Susan's shouts followed, faint through the wood. You're disowning him. You're not human. When you're old and sick, don't come crawling back. I kept walking, my suitcase rolling over the cobblestone path, the jasmine's sweetness now cloying. They didn't know about the $8 million Catherine had left me, the fortune legally mine. I hadn't told them, not yet. But as I reached the street, a bitter resolve settled in my bones. They'd learned soon enough that betraying me carried a price far heavier than they could imagine. The hotel lobby glittered like a constellation trapped in marble, its chandeliers casting prisms across the ivory walls. I stood at the check-in counter, my fingers brushing the cool granite, the faint scent of orchids lingering in the air. After leaving Ethan's house, I'd chosen this sanctuary, a 5-star haven downtown where the world felt polished, untouchable. My satchel rested by my feet, lighter now, as if shedding the weight of 30 years. Inside me, a quiet fire burned, not rage, but resolve, a seedling breaking through stone. I handed the clerk my card, my heart steady as I claimed this space, this moment, for myself. No one here knew me as a housekeeper, a mother, a sacrifice. I was Aurora, and for the first time, I felt the shape of that name, solid and unyielding. In my suite, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawling below like a tapestry of lights and shadows. Skyscrapers pierced the dusk, their reflections shimmering in the river, a mirror of my own duality, caught between past servitude and newfound power. I dialed Catherine's attorney, my voice calm but edged with purpose. It's time to secure everything, I told him, my fingers tracing the window's cool glass. The trust, the assets, make it airtight. Catherine's gift, $8 million, a fortune born of her respect for me, felt like a lifeline, not just wealth but a declaration, I was more than their laborer. As I hung up, I caught my reflection, gray eyes sharp with clarity. I'd spent decades building their world, now, I'd carve my own. The next morning, I stepped into the rhythm of reinvention, my heels clicking against the pavement as I headed to a real estate showroom. The city hummed, car horns, distant laughter, the clatter of a street vendor's cart, yet I moved with singular focus. I'd scheduled a tour at a gated villa community, its reputation whispered in elite circles, a place where wealth wasn't just lived but displayed. My navy blazer felt foreign, a costume of confidence I was still learning to wear, but I straightened my spine, each step a defiance of the voices calling me useless. Inside, I imagined a home that was mine alone, no demands, no debts, just space to breathe. The thought stirred a flicker of joy, fragile but growing, like a melody I'd forgotten how to sing. The showroom was a cathedral of opulence, its air cool with the scent of polished wood and fresh lilies. Scale models of villas glowed under soft spotlights, their miniature gardens lush with promise. I paused by a display, my fingers hovering over a tiny rooftop terrace, picturing mornings with coffee and silence. A young woman approached, her smile tentative but warm, her name tag reading Monica. "Good afternoon, ma'am," she said, her voice soft, like she feared breaking the room's spell. "Would you like to see the model homes?" I nodded, sensing her nervousness, a mirror of my own past, always striving to prove worth. "Yes, please," I replied, my tone kind but firm, wanting her to feel seen. As we moved toward the display, a sharp voice shattered the calm, slicing through my thoughts like a blade. "Who's screening clients today?" The words dripped with disdain, echoing across the marble floor. I turned to see Chloe, Susan's niece, striding forward, her stilettos clicking like a metronome of contempt. Her blonde hair was swept into a sleek bun, her eyes, blue and cold as glacier ice, fixed on me with recognition. My stomach tightened, but I held my ground, the memory of Susan's condescension fueling my resolve. Chloe's lips curled into a sneer, her gaze raking over my blazer as if it were a cheap disguise. "Aurora? What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice loud enough to draw stares. "Don't tell me you're pretending to buy." "Here for the free coffee." The crowd murmured, their whispers a net tightening around me, but I saw her fear, a flicker of doubt beneath the bravado, as if my presence threatened her carefully curated world. I met her gaze, my voice steady, a riverbed unshaken by her storm. "I'm here to view a property," I said. "Is that a problem?" Chloe stepped closer, blocking my path, her perfume sharp and synthetic, a mask for her insecurity. "A housekeeper," she scoffed, loud enough for the room to hear. "You can't afford this place. I've seen your type, sneaking in for snacks, wasting everyone's time." Her words were meant to wound, to shrink me back to the woman who'd scrubbed floors, but they sparked something else, defiance, bright and unyielding. I thought of Catherine, her elegant hands teaching me to paint, to play piano, to see myself beyond labor. Chloe didn't know me, not the Aurora who'd earned a fortune through loyalty, not the woman who'd survived betrayal. I raised a hand, stopping Monica's hesitant step forward, my resolve a shield. Monica's eyes darted between us, her fingers twisting the hem of her blazer, caught in Chloe's shadow. "Chloe, I can show her around," she offered, her voice trembling but earnest, a plea for peace. Chloe shoved her aside, her sneer sharpening. "Don't lecture me on my job," she snapped, then waved to two security guards, their radios crackling. "Escort this visitor out." The showroom fell silent, eyes pinning me like a specimen, but I stood taller, my heart a drumbeat of certainty. "I came to buy," I said, my voice cutting through the hush. "On what grounds are you removing me? Where's your manager?" The guards hesitated, sensing the shift, and I turned to the crowd, my tone measured but bold. "Have I done anything wrong?" Chloe's confidence wavered, a crack in her facade, revealing a woman terrified of losing control. A young man in a crisp white shirt hurried over, his smile polished but strained. "I'm Alex, the sales manager," he said, his eyes flicking from me to Chloe. "Is there an issue?" Before I could speak, Chloe pounced, her voice shrill. "She's here for freebies, Alex." I was about to have her removed. Alex frowned, his professionalism a thin veil over unease. "Ma'am, could you show financial verification? This is an invitation-only showcase." I pulled a folder from my bag, my movements deliberate, each page a testament to my truth. "They verified my documents at the entrance," I said, handing it over. Chloe snatched it, flipping it open with a theatrical flourish. "5 million, she shouted, her laugh brittle. "A housekeeper? This is fake. I know her, she's nobody." Her desperation was palpable, a woman clinging to superiority as it slipped away, and I felt a pang of pity, quickly buried under resolve. I opened my banking app, the screen glowing with numbers that silenced the room, $8,234,517. Monica leaned closer, her breath catching. "Over 8 million, she whispered, her eyes wide with awe. Gasps rippled through the crowd, their judgment morphing into curiosity, even reverence. Chloe's face drained of color, cycling through red, pale, then ghostly white, her hands trembling as her world tilted. "That's impossible," she stammered, but Alex's expression hardened. "Chloe, enough," he said, then turned to me, his tone respectful. "Ma'am, I apologize. We'll assign our best manager to assist you." I waved a hand, my smile calm but unwavering. "No need. Monica's perfect, very professional. I want her." Monica's cheeks flushed, her gratitude a quiet spark, and I saw her inner struggle, yearning to prove herself, yet fearing she'd falter. Pointing to a scale model, a villa with soaring ceilings and a sunroom sprawling like an embrace, I felt a surge of certainty. "This one," I said. "I'll take it." Monica's eyes lit up, but she hesitated. "Ma'am, are you sure? I can show others." I shook my head, my decision a cornerstone. "It's enough." As we moved to the signing area, I glanced at Alex. "And another unit," I added, my voice cool. "One to live in, one to invest. But I expect you to address your staff's behavior." Alex nodded, his gaze landing on Chloe, who stood rigid, her lips twitching with suppressed fury. "Chloe, apologize," he ordered. She lifted her chin, defiant. "Why?" She was a housekeeper, one of those live-in types for rich old men. Her words were a last gasp, venom born of envy, and I saw her truth, a woman who measured worth by status, terrified of being outshone. I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto hers. "You say my son told you that?" I asked, my tone sharp but controlled. "Then hear this, he also said your deals came from nights with clients, not skill. Is that true?" Chloe's face crumpled, her voice rising. "You're lying. That's slander." I smiled faintly. "Like what you just did to me?" Alex's expression turned grim. "Chloe, you're terminated," he said, nodding to security. I raised a hand, stopping them. "Not yet," I said, dialing my phone. "Police department? I'd like to report defamation." 10 minutes later, officers arrived, their badges glinting under the showroom's lights. After hearing my account, they issued Chloe a warning: apologize publicly, or face charges. Cornered, she muttered, "I'm sorry," her eyes burning with hatred as she stormed out, her envy a wildfire consuming her pride. Monica stood by my side, her hands clasped, eyes shimmering. "Ma'am, I can't thank you enough," she said, her voice thick with emotion. 3 months here, no sales, then 2 today. You're my miracle." I signed the contracts, the pen gliding smoothly, each stroke a reclamation of my worth. As I left, the crowd's murmurs followed, admiration, disbelief, awe. I'd bought 2 villas, paid in full, not to flaunt but to be. Later, my phone rang, Ethan, his voice taut with anger. "What did you do to Chloe? Her family's after us now. Fix it." I laughed softly, the sound light, unburdened. "That's your problem," I said. "We're done." I blocked his number, then Nicole's, then Susan's, severing each tie with a click. The city sparkled beyond my hotel window, and I felt it, a breakthrough, a horizon unfolding. I wasn't just free, I was mine. The morning sun spilled through my hotel suite's curtains, painting the room in hues of amber and gold, a quiet promise of new beginnings. I sat at the mahogany desk, a steaming cup of chamomile tea cradled in my hands, its floral warmth a gentle anchor against the storm I sensed brewing. The villas were mine now, contracts signed, keys pending, but the triumph felt fragile, like a soap bubble trembling before the wind. Ethan's call last night, his voice thick with accusation over Chloe's downfall, lingered in my mind, a splinter I couldn't yet pluck. I sipped my tea, the liquid soothing my throat, and traced the rim of the cup, each circle a vow to protect my peace. I'd severed their numbers, but I knew Ethan, his greed was a tide, relentless, and I braced for its next surge, my heart a fortress half-built. A knock at the door startled me, the sound sharp against the suite's plush silence. I rose, my silk robe whispering against my skin, and opened it to find a bellhop, his uniform crisp, holding a bouquet of lilies and roses so lavish it seemed to mock simplicity. "Delivered to the front desk, ma'am," he said, his eyes curious but polite. I took the flowers, their petals cool and dewy, and found a card nestled among the blooms, "Wishing you a lovely weekend, love, your son Ethan." My breath caught, not with warmth but with a cold clarity, like frost settling on a windowpane. The audacity of it, his saccharine words after his venom, stirred a laugh, sharp and mirthless, from deep within me. I carried the bouquet to the kitchenette, my steps deliberate, and with a single motion, I thrust it into the trash, petals crumpling like his false remorse. My phone captured the wreckage, bent stems, a crumpled card, and I sent the image to the gatehouse with a note: "Refuse anything from him. Show him this." Humiliation was my first counterstrike, a signal that his games no longer held sway. Days later, I stood on the balcony, the city's pulse humming below, taxis weaving, pedestrians blurring into streams of color. I'd thrown myself into planning my move, sketching layouts for the villa's sunroom, imagining bookshelves heavy with novels and paints drying on an easel. Each choice felt like a reclamation, a stitch mending the tears of 30 years. Yet as I leaned against the railing, the breeze carrying a faint tang of diesel and river water, I sensed a shadow encroaching. Ethan wasn't done, his silence was too loud, a predator's pause before the lunge. My fingers tightened on the iron rail, the metal cool and unyielding, mirroring the resolve hardening within me. I'd built a life for him once, I'd not let him dismantle mine now. The thought was a spark, igniting a fierce determination to stand unbowed, no matter what he hurled next. That afternoon, I drove to the villa community to finalize details, the car's leather seats warm beneath me, the radio murmuring jazz that felt like a companion. The gates loomed ahead, wrought iron gleaming under the midday sun, a barrier between my past and future. As I slowed, my heart sank. There was Ethan, slouched by the entrance, his navy jacket rumpled, his face etched with a theatrical misery. He spotted me, his eyes lighting with desperate hope, and dropped to his knees on the sidewalk, hands clasped like a supplicant. "Mom, please," he shouted, his voice cracking, loud enough for passers-by to turn. I was wrong. "Come home." My fingers gripped the steering wheel, knuckles whitening, as disgust coiled in my chest. This wasn't remorse, it was performance, a calculated plea to pierce my resolve. I saw his inner truth, a man who craved control, not forgiveness, his tears a currency to buy back my wealth. I pressed the accelerator, the car gliding past, but his cries followed, shrill and insistent. "Mom, I'm still your son. How can you be so cold?" The words clawed at me, not for their truth but for their lie. After all I'd given, he dared paint me as heartless. I glanced in the rearview mirror, his figure shrinking, yet the weight of his presence lingered, a chain I'd yet to fully break. At the villa office, I finalized furnishings, my pen steady as I signed for marble countertops and teak floors, each choice a brick in my new foundation. But Ethan's stunt gnawed at me, a reminder of his persistence. I hired a driver that evening, a quiet man named Victor whose steady hands promised anonymity. "Take me straight to the garage," I told him, my voice firm, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. I'd not give Ethan the stage he craved, my silence would be his rebuke. Victor became my shield, his black sedan a fortress gliding through the gates each day. Ethan was there, relentless, rain-soaked one morning, sunburned the next, his signs scrawled with "Mom, I'm sorry" or "Please talk to me." I watched from behind tinted windows, my heart a tangle of pity and resolve, like ivy choking a tree. Once, Victor slowed, his gray eyes meeting mine in the mirror, a question unspoken. "He's been out there hours," he said, his voice low, weathered by years of seeing too much. I shook my head, my fingers smoothing the silk scarf around my neck, its softness a contrast to my steel. "He's not waiting for me," I said. "He's waiting for money." Victor nodded, a faint sadness in his gaze, revealing a man who understood betrayal's sting, perhaps from his own hidden scars. I leaned back, the engines hum a lullaby, my thoughts sharpening. Ethan's desperation was a mirror, reflecting his emptiness, not my failure. 2 weeks passed, and Ethan's presence became routine, like graffiti on a wall, intrusive but ignorable. I filled my days with purpose, meetings with decorators, calls to investment advisors, lunches at bistros where I savored tart lemon tarts and the freedom to linger. Each act was a defiance, a brushstroke on a canvas I'd once left blank. Yet I sensed a shift, a quiet before a storm, my intuition humming like a plucked string. I stood in the villa's empty sunroom one evening, its glass walls framing a sunset that bled crimson across the sky. My fingers brushed the bare walls, imagining them alive with color, and I felt a breakthrough, a certainty that I was no longer running but building, no longer hiding but claiming. Ethan's games couldn't touch this, I told myself, but the lie tasted thin. Deep down, I knew he'd find another way to strike, and I'd need more than walls to hold him at bay. My phone rang as I returned to the hotel, the screen glowing with an unknown number, a serpent's hiss in the quiet. I answered, my pulse quickening, and a voice I hadn't heard in 20 years rasped through the line. "Richard, my ex-husband," his tone casual but weighted, like a stone dropped in still water. "Aurora, just a heads up," he said, the faint clink of ice in a glass punctuating his words. "Ethan came to me, crying, begging me to talk you into going back. Made a scene at my office." I sank onto the velvet chaise, my fingers gripping the phone, the room's opulence fading as memories surged. Richard's ultimatums, his rejection of Ethan, my choice to walk away. "What did you tell him?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with dread. Richard sighed, a sound heavy with detachment. I said I'm not his father. Took a paternity test to prove it. Told him it's your business, not mine. My breath hitched, the past a tide pulling me under, but I clung to the present, my resolve a lifeline. Richard's voice softened, a rare crack in his armor, revealing a man haunted by choices he'd buried. I didn't tell him everything, he continued. Kept my promise, never mentioned his real start. He knows I'm not his dad, but you're still his mother, Aurora. He's fixated on you. I closed my eyes, the phone cool against my cheek, and saw Ethan's face. Not the man kneeling outside, but the frail boy I'd found, his lips blue, his eyes clinging to mine. I'd saved him then, but now he hunted me, not for love but for leverage. Thank you, Richard, I said, my tone clipped, ending the call. I stood, pacing the suite, my shadow stretching across the Persian rug. Ethan's knowledge was a spark in dry grass. He'd come again, angrier, hungrier, and I'd need to face him with a truth sharper than his lies. Victor drove me home the next day, his silence a comfort as we passed the gates, Ethan's absence a sudden void, like a storm cloud vanished from the horizon. I leaned forward, my scarf slipping to reveal the pulse at my throat, quick and alive. He's gone, I said, half to myself, my voice a mix of relief and unease. Victor glanced back, his weathered face creased with caution. For now, he replied, his words a warning, his eyes revealing a man who'd seen too many ghosts return. I nodded, my fingers twisting the scarf's fringe, each knot a reminder of my vigilance. Ethan wasn't retreating, he was plotting, digging into my past like a scavenger, seeking any crack to exploit. I thought of Richard's call, the paternity test, and felt a shift, a door creaking open to a truth I'd guarded for decades. In the villa's garden, I walked among bare rose bushes, their thorns glinting in the twilight, a silent promise of beauty and pain. I knelt, my hands brushing the soil, cool and rich, and imagined roots taking hold, my roots, not Ethan's. Each touch grounded me, a meditation on strength, but my thoughts spiraled to the boy I'd adopted, the dumpster where he'd been left, the heart defect that nearly claimed him. I'd given him life, but he'd twisted that gift into a debt, his greed a parasite feeding on my love. Standing, I wiped my hands, the dirt smudging my palms like a map of my struggles, and felt a new clarity, sharp as the thorns around me. If Ethan came again, I'd tell him everything, his origins, my sacrifices, not to wound but to free myself, to shatter the chains he thought he held. That night, I sat at the desk, the city's lights a constellation beyond the window, each glow a story I'd never know. I opened a notebook, my pen scratching a list of truths I'd kept silent, Ethan's adoption papers, hospital bills, the divorce decree that saved him. My hand trembled, not with fear but with purpose, each word a brick in a wall against his lies. I thought of Victor's caution, Richard's detachment, Ethan's theatrics, and saw their hidden corners, Victor's empathy born of loss, Richard's guilt masked by indifference, Ethan's desperation cloaking a void where gratitude should have been. My own heart held shadows too, love that had blinded me, hope that had bound me, but now, I was rewriting my story, line by line. Ethan's next move would find me ready, not as his mother but as Aurora, a woman who'd learned to fight for herself. The phone lay silent, but I felt the weight of what was coming, a storm gathering beyond the horizon. I closed the notebook, my fingers lingering on its leather cover, worn smooth by time, like my own resilience. I stood, my reflection in the window sharp-edged, no longer softened by doubt. Ethan thought he could break me, but he'd forgotten, or never known, the woman who'd survived worse than his betrayal. I poured another cup of tea, the steam curling like a prayer, and let the warmth seep into my hands, my heart, my bones. The villas were just the start, my true home was the strength I was building, piece by piece, unassailable. Let him come, I thought, my lips curving into a quiet smile. I'd be waiting, not with tears but with truth, ready to end this war before it consumed us both. The villa's sunroom glowed under dawn's tender touch, its glass walls cradling the first blush of light like a secret whispered to the world. I sat on a wicker chair, a laptop balanced on my knees, its screen a portal to a battle I hadn't chosen but wouldn't flee. My fingers hovered over the keys, each tap a pulse of intent, as I browsed listings for art supplies, canvases, oils, brushes to fill this space with color. Yet a chill lingered, not from the morning's breeze but from a shift in the air, a dissonance I couldn't name. I set the laptop aside, my hands brushing the chair's woven texture, its roughness grounding me. Ethan's absence at the gates felt less like retreat than a coiled spring, and I sensed his shadow stretching toward me, not in flesh but in whispers I'd yet to hear. My heart quickened, a drumbeat of vigilance, as I prepared to meet whatever he'd unleashed. A call from Monica shattered the quiet, her voice trembling through the phone like a leaf caught in wind. "Aurora, I hate to bother you," she said, her words rushed, heavy with loyalty. "People are talking, online, in the neighborhood. I know you're good, but it's ugly. Please, don't let it hurt you." I stood, pacing the sunroom, my slippers whispering against the slate floor. "What are they saying?" I asked, my tone calm but edged, like a blade sheathed in silk. Monica hesitated, then spoke softly. "Ethan's streaming, lies about you abandoning him. It's everywhere." The words landed like ash, gray and choking, and I felt a spark ignite, not fear, but fury, tempered by clarity. I thanked her, my voice steady, and hung up, my fingers curling into fists, nails biting my palms. Ethan hadn't come to my door, he'd built a stage to crucify me, and I'd answer not with tears but with truth. I opened my laptop again, the screen's glow harsh against the dawn's softness, and searched for Ethan's stream, how my mother abandoned me. His face filled the frame, gaunt and shadowed, his hazel eyes glistening with practiced sorrow. "She left me alone," he said, his voice a mournful cadence, studying, struggling, while she worked for rich folks, never helping. The lies wove a tapestry of victimhood, each thread a distortion of my sacrifices. Comments flooded in, "Poor guy, what a heartless mom," and my chest tightened, not with pain but with resolve, like a river carving stone. I leaned back, my fingers tracing the laptop's edge, its cool metal a reminder of my agency. Ethan thought he could rewrite me, but I'd spent decades crafting my truth. I registered an account on StreamNet, my username a quiet defiance, Aurora Speaks, and titled my channel, "So This Is the Mom Ethan Claims Abandoned Him." The act was a flare in the dark, my heart a forge where fear burned into purpose. Before launching, I slipped into Ethan's stream, my cursor a silent predator. I donated thousands, the numbers flashing across his screen, a lure to draw eyes. Then I typed, my words bold and unyielding, "Hi, I'm the heartless mother Ethan's mourning." He says I cut him off. Join my channel tonight, I'll show the truth, $100,000 in prizes, first come, first served. The chat erupted, a frenzy of curiosity and greed, and viewers surged to my stream, their avatars a tide I'd summoned. I smiled, a quiet thrill pulsing through me, as I clicked go live. The camera captured me in the sunroom, morning light haloing my gray hair, my eyes sharp with conviction. I held a folder, trust documents, legal proof of my $8 million, and felt its weight, not as burden but as armor. This wasn't just a defense, it was a reclamation, a voice I'd silenced too long now rising like a hymn. First, I did stop supporting Ethan, I began, my voice clear, resonating against the glass walls. But not because I stopped loving him. His greed broke us. I spoke of my plan to share Catherine's fortune, my fingers tightening on the folder, each crease a memory of hope dashed. He and his wife accused me of freeloading, I said, threw me out, demanded I work for strangers to fund their lives. I displayed the trust papers, their notarized seals gleaming, proof my wealth was earned, not stolen. Comments exploded, "She's legit. What kind of son does that?" And I felt a shift, a tide turning. I leaned closer, my breath steady, and played an audio clip, Ethan's voice scheming to send me to an elderly man's home as a servant. The sound crackled, raw and damning, and I saw his betrayal anew, my heart a crucible where pain forged strength. "I wasn't his mother to them," I said. "I was a bank." The chat roared, outrage mingling with awe, but skeptics lingered, their words sharp, "You're still his mom. Cutting him off after marriage? Cold." I met their challenge, my gaze unwavering, the camera confident. Does supporting a child mean being their ATM forever? I asked, my voice soft but piercing. I raised him alone, paid for college, bought him a home. I uploaded images, tuition receipts, mortgage stubs, each a relic of my devotion, my fingers trembling as I clicked, not with doubt but with release. Then I dropped the truth I'd guarded like a wound. Ethan isn't my biological son. I adopted him at 1, found in a dumpster, dying from a heart defect. My voice broke, not from shame but from the weight of love unreturned. I showed the adoption certificate, its faded ink a testament, and felt a breakthrough, freedom, not in hiding my story but in claiming it, my soul unburdened at last. Ethan's stream flickered on my second screen, his face paling as viewers deserted him, their comments now venomous. You lied. She saved your life. He shouted, his voice fraying, she's manipulating you. Why would she do all that if I wasn't hers? I answered on my channel, my tone calm, a lighthouse in his storm. I chose him, I said, because I believed love could heal. But he chose greed. I shared hospital bills, divorce papers, proof I'd left my marriage to keep him, my hands steady as I uploaded, each click a severance of his hold. The internet turned, Ethan's followers dwindling, his merchandise mocked, his sob story crumbling like ash. I leaned back, the wicker chair creaking, and felt a quiet victory, not in vengeance but in truth, my reflection in the glass walls no longer a shadow but a beacon. Monica texted as my stream ended, her words a burst of light, you were amazing. People are with you. I smiled, my fingers brushing the laptop's warm keys, its hum a partner in my fight. Ethan's channel was suspended that night, his lies silenced, and my lawyer called, his voice crisp with strategy. We can sue for defamation, he said. Demand damages. I paused, the sunroom's light now golden, bathing me in warmth. Soon, I replied, my voice soft but sure. Let him unravel a bit more. I closed the laptop, my hands resting on its lid, the silence a canvas for my thoughts. Ethan's desperation wasn't for me but for what I held, money, power, a life he'd squandered. I stood, the slate cool beneath my feet, and felt a new horizon, not just of victory but of peace, a world where I defined my worth. My new home nestled against the lake's edge, its whitewashed walls kissed by dawn's gentle glow, a quiet hymn to beginnings. I stood in the garden, pruning shears in hand, snipping withered rosebuds, their petals drifting to the earth like sighs released. The air carried a crisp tang of water and pine, the lake's surface rippling under a breeze that whispered of peace. Months had passed since the online storm, and the villa's sunroom, once my battleground, felt like a distant echo. I'd sold both properties during a market surge, pocketing a profit that felt less like triumph than liberation, a currency of choice. Each cut of the shears was deliberate, my fingers steady, the rhythm soothing a heart once frayed by betrayal. I was no longer running, from Ethan, from pain, but planting roots, my thoughts blooming with a clarity sharp as morning light. The house I'd reclaimed stood across town, its familiar silhouette a ghost I'd faced and tamed. I'd walked its halls one final time, my attorney's papers crisp in my hands, the ink of ownership transfer a quiet victory. The living room's hardwood gleamed, sunlight spilling through windows I'd once scrubbed, now mine again. I paused by the fireplace, my fingers brushing the mantel, its cool marble a ledger of sacrifices repaid. I didn't linger, memories of Ethan's rage, Nicole's scorn, were shadows too thin to hold me. Selling the villas had freed me, but reclaiming this house was a reclamation of self, a line drawn in the sand of my past. I smiled softly, the act a private ritual, and left the keys with a realtor, my heart unburdened, a bird slipping its cage. The sale funded this lakeside haven, a choice born not of spite but of a hunger to live unbound. A letter arrived that week, its envelope plain but heavy with intent, postmarked from Nicole's attorney. I sat at my kitchen table, the wood grain warm under my palms, a mug of dark roast coffee steaming nearby, its aroma rich with comfort. The letter detailed her divorce from Ethan, signed with a precision that spoke of finality, no trace of the venom she'd once wielded. I leaned back, the chair creaking softly, and pictured her, jade eyes cold but clear, her auburn hair perhaps looser now, free of the weight of a man who'd crumbled under his own lies. My fingers traced the mug's handle, its curve familiar, and I felt no malice, only a quiet recognition. She'd seen Ethan's truth, a parasite unmasked, and chosen herself. I folded the letter, my movements slow, each crease a closure of their chapter, my thoughts drifting to the woman I'd become, one who no longer carried their burdens. The town's rhythm was slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat steady with purpose. I walked its cobblestone paths each morning, past bakeries wafting vanilla and shops with hand-painted signs, my scarf fluttering in the breeze. One day, at a cafe tucked by the lake, I met Clara, a retired librarian with silver curls and eyes like weathered oak, warm yet piercing. We shared a table, her laughter bright as she recounted tales of lost books and curious patrons. "You've got a painter's hands," she said, nodding at my fingers, smudged with ochre from an afternoon's work. I chuckled, my cheeks warming, and set my teacup down, its porcelain delicate, a mirror of my newfound ease. "Trying to learn," I said, my voice light, but her gaze held mine, sensing the weight I'd shed, her own past, perhaps a story of quiet battles, hidden in her smile's creases. Clara's words lingered as I painted that evening, my easel by the garden's edge, wisteria vines curling above like a canopy of dreams. I dipped my brush in cobalt, the stroke bold against the canvas, a sky unfurling where I'd once seen only storms. Each sweep was a meditation, my thoughts weaving through years of giving, Ethan's frail body in my arms, nights of stitching crafts for pennies, a marriage traded for his life. I paused, the brush hovering, paint dripping like tears I no longer owed. I didn't regret choosing him, I realized, my heart a quiet lake reflecting truth. Regret was for not guarding my own light sooner, for letting kindness become a chain. The canvas glowed, half finished, and I felt a breakthrough, not in the art but in me, a woman painting her future, stroke by stroke, unafraid to leave spaces blank. News of Ethan reached me weeks later, unbidden, like a leaf carried on the wind. Clara mentioned it over scones, her voice soft, careful. "He's in Canada, they say," she murmured, crumbling her pastry, her fingers betraying unease. "Posting online, boasting of freedom." I nodded, stirring my tea, the spoon clinking faintly, a metronome to my calm. Out of curiosity, I searched his name that night, my laptop's glow stark against the kitchen's warmth. A video surfaced, Ethan, disheveled, hunched by a trash bin, gnawing moldy bread, his eyes vacant, flickering between manic grins and sobs that tore through him. I froze, my hand on the mouse, the cursor a heartbeat stilled. He was a ghost of the man who'd slandered me, his lies a house collapsed, leaving only madness. I closed the laptop, my breath steady, and felt no joy, no anger, just a hollow space where he'd once lived, my thoughts a tide pulling toward shores of my own making. The lake shimmered beyond my window, its surface a canvas of dusk, purples and golds dancing in quiet harmony. I stood, my bare feet cool on the hardwood, and lit a candle, its flame a tiny sun against the gathering dark. The scent of lavender curled upward, a prayer for peace I'd earned. I thought of Nicole, signing her freedom, Clara, sharing her warmth, Ethan, lost to his choices. Each was a thread in a tapestry I no longer wove, my hands now free to shape my own design. I opened a sketchbook, my pencil scratching softly, lines forming a garden not yet planted, a dream, not a debt. My heart hummed, a melody of belonging, not to others but to myself, a truth carved in the quiet of my days. Clara asked me once, as we walked the lake's edge, pebbles crunching underfoot, if I regretted Ethan. The question hung like mist, soft but probing, her eyes searching mine, perhaps seeing her own ghosts. I paused, my scarf catching the wind, its silk a whisper of resilience. "No," I said, my voice clear, a bell rung in stillness. "I regret only not learning sooner that kindness shouldn't shatter you." She nodded, her hand brushing mine, a fleeting warmth, her silence a story unspoken. I looked to the water, its ripples endless, and smiled, my reflection sharp, unshadowed. I was no saint, no martyr, just Aurora, a woman who'd found her place, late but not too late, in a world gentle with possibility.